Hey everybody, Michael here, dropping in real quick to remind you to please go over and follow us on Instagram. We got some good stuff up there. We post about our books and, new episodes. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube page, the world's only Animorphs podcast. Oh, and our Instagram handle is Only Annie Pod. Guys, enjoyed this episode covering book 6 of Animorphs. Action. That's for book. That's got to be for book 8. Action.
Yeah.
Lights, camera, action.
Fair.
This is book 6. This is.
Book, but we didn't. So.
This is the capture.
The capture.
We're quite literally no spoilers yet, but
he's one of them.
Now he's one of. Oh, is that what it says on the cover?
It is.
That's a good one. Once again, I'm reading it on Kindle.
He'd be a fly. Now he's a fly. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Max has got the hard copy. Can I see the inside?
Yes, you can.
Let's see the original pressing.
Fly.
Max's original book from back in the day, and he's a barn fly.
All the appropriate browning and yellowing on the inside of the cover.
Yeah, and they didn't go with the roach on the cover because there's also a roach morph in this. But that they did one later with roach on the cover, which seems like kind of a going backwards a little bit because they all acquired the roach here in book 6, and then I forget what book it is, but they're morphing a roach on one of the things on one of the covers.
Yeah, I think they have to revisit the morph because they realize, as nasty as it is, it ends up being actually pretty decent for intel, and the reactive properties that they have for their environment tend to come in handy too.
Once they learn at the beginning of the book to take vibrations that they hear from their antenna.
Yeah,
and then kind of distinguish those into words. You know, they're doing well with their practice morphing. You know,
right. That goes back to one of the questions that we had last week of why haven't they started actually doing that, like researching the morph a little bit beforehand, or they kind of start hinting towards it a little bit too, but I still don't see much evidence of them actually repetitively morphing the same thing, just over and over, however many times in a row that they can, seeing either the limit of how many times they can morph back and forth in a row, or see if they can get any better at it, see if there's anything that they can figure, give themselves maybe a paper cut before they morph, go into a morph, come back, see if that does anything.
They got to find these things out. They didn't know what they didn't know. They didn't know what questions to ask at this point, because Jake says towards the end of the book just how he, there's all these different morphs in his head, and there's not that many of them. Let me see. He says dog, fish, flea, seagull, dolphin, ant, wolf, and then add to that tiger, bird, and lizard. So they're still kind of at the beginning,
he's got that falcon.
I don't think they knew to practice yet, but that's definitely something that they should do, find out all these different answers to the stuff. Now they got Axe in there to kind of help them do it.
You would like to think he'd be able to help more, but he seems a little timid in that respect because of fear of being
you gave the answers of our society that. You took our special race secrets and gave it to another
He doesn't want to be the next, I don't want to say his name. I don't want to spoil. No spoilers.
In this one, the thing that struck me at the beginning is the kind of tragic relationship between Jake and Tom. There's that whole scene at the beginning where they're sitting around the table and Tom is actually, he's like, hey, midget, what's up? And you cringe a little bit at the midget usage, But that's something you hear brothers call a little brother, or you'll see a dad call a daughter. That's kind of cute. But now it's also super inappropriate.
Yeah, it's a whole lot less PC now.
yeah, right. Things were different. And then this part about the roach speed from chapter 3 on my Kindle, it's
up,
only
little
page
person?
12. Yeah, what's up, little person? That's probably what the new editions say. But then in chapter 3, when he roaches the morph,
That's good.
When he morphs the roach.
I've roached the morph a couple of times.
You totally roached the morph, Jake. No, he morphs the roach and he's like, run from the light. Imagine being in one of those race cars at the Indianapolis 500. Now imagine that instead of sitting in one, you're strapped face down underneath one. Your nose is about 1/10 of an inch from the road and you're going 180 miles an hour. That's what it was like when I ran. My roach legs powered like something from a Roadrunner cartoon. Gross, roach legs. I blew out from under the folds of my own clothing. I blew across that carpet. I was rocket propelled. That part about the roach speed always stuck with me, you know. And then the
Zoom 3 miles an hour.
yeah, 3 miles an hour. And then the fly too. Whenever they morph into the fly, and Cassie's like, "Wow, woo!" You know, I like it sounds like it. Yeah.
Oh my god.
She's like Mario from like Mario Kart or something like that. That's Cassie as a fly.
Getting the triple jump.
Right.
64, yeah.
But then it's these things they reference kind of throughout the book, like roach speed, how crazy it is to be a fly, how like monotonous and scary it is to be an ant. Selfless, the droning machine of the ant.
And not in the way that you would think, not the good way, not the right kind of selfless, like doing stuff for other people. No concept of identity, self, separation from a unit.
No soul that is your own.
Soulless, yeah.
A collective soul, a collective drive that the ants have, that you completely lose yourself and I imagine
you are
like,
the Borg.
If it was ever like in a movie, I would imagine just like the sound going, jong, 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 jong. You know, like some kind of, what do you call it? Like a warehouse or like a, you know, what do they call that style that's, man, why can't I think of it right now? It's like old style kind of metal and smoke and black and leather and kind of like Road Warrior vibe. Steampunk.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
For some reason, I see like the ant morph part of the movie being like a steampunk type of vibe, you know?
Okay.
I'm not sure why I thought that. But, you know, whenever Jake morphs...
Antiquated technology with new...
Jake, whenever he comes out of the roach morph and he's got like the roach motel stuck in his hair. That's the first time I'd ever heard the term roach motel. I didn't know that.
Really?
Yeah, like I didn't know that was like a brand, and you know I knew Raid and everything like that. But I remember as a kid being like, roach motel, what is that?
Yeah, they check in, but they don't check out.
It's like Hotel California. You can check in, but then you can never leave.
You can never leave.
I was thinking, what is this note that I have here? So there's one part where Jake is morphing back. All his mom... Oh, yeah, it's whenever he's coming back from Roach Morph. He's got the Roach Motel. He's stuck in there, and he has to morph out. And then his parents came home because Jake's dad twisted his ankle, you know, playing tennis. And then Jake was like, well, all my mom could see was my head. My head was normal, and the rest of his body was still morphing. So I was wondering, I got a Michael Wonders here.
Michael
Wonders, even though the segment is Max Wonders. And I was like, does the fact that his head was morphed as it was sticking out of the back of the fridge, only his head was morphed so that his mom could see just his head and not the rest of his roach body, does that suggest that his urgency to morph quickly was controlled the morph? So he was able to control the morph because he was like, I got to change my head so my mom doesn't catch me.
I don't know if it was just coincidence and convenient writing. Or, yeah, you would think like, yeah, in like a moment of fight or flight type of response almost, he would get this like boost in natural ability to, hurry up the morph or get a particular part of the morph done, concentrate on that aspect. I don't remember it saying that he necessarily concentrated particularly on
the head.
On the head.
I think it just happened though. I think he was just, you know, like subconsciously controlled it because all he says is that she could see my head and it was normal. And then she asked me, Jake, why are you back there? And while we're at it, why do you have the top of a roach motel stuck in your hair? It's in chapter 4 somewhere. But I was like, yeah, maybe like he subconsciously controlled the morph, you know? Like just out of necessity, I guess. Out of some kind of subconscious explanation. We get an explanation in here too about how yerks actually go into the brain. Because Jake acts about how the Yerk slug lives in a person's head. And Axe explained it to Jake, how they flatten their slug-like bodies, how they sink between the crevices and cracks of a person's brain. They melt like a liquid into every available space, how they wrap their bodies around a brain and attach their own neurons to human neurons. And Jake is thinking about that while looking at Tom across a breakfast table. You know, and Tom's like, "What's your malfunction?" Which is a very 90s thing, I think, to say.
Very.
But it's like, you know, and then of course we find out. So what's the whole plan here? Like the Yerks have this plan to take the governor of this whatever state they're in, take over a hospital, have the governor go there, and then infest the governor, which is a pretty smart plan, I think. That doesn't work.
It's so funny that they're this like intergalactic species that's now very adept, I would say, or practiced at least at taking over worlds, taking over an entire species. I think the main thing that's holding them back that they have kind of slightly referenced at this point is numbers, just sheer numbers. The fact that there are so many humans. I think it would more than double their overall size is basically what I'm gathering, because otherwise they should have no problem just coming down here and taking it. It shouldn't be that hard, I wouldn't think.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
Though,
they're trying to like preserve as many of the bodies as possible, do a silent infiltration so that they don't have to kill, you would think, until Visser 3 comes around and he gets upset about something.
Visser 3 will take out human controllers like it's nothing.
All the time.
Like there's that one part where...
left and right.
Well, before we get to that, because I want to talk about the creepy sharing compound that they have, just this like white building wherever they go. But there's one cool part that I liked. It's in chapter 7 when basically they're just kind of joking around. I think they're actually just morphed into roaches, and Tobias is watching them, right? And they're about to infiltrate the sharing building. And then Tobias says, "You should see yourselves. The urge to step on you is pretty strong. If I had shoes, I never did like roaches." And then Marco says, "This coming from a guy who disembowels live mice for lunch." And then Tobias says, "Don't knock it if you haven't tried it." So he's kind of like joking around with Marco.
I was on the page.
And then it says, Jake says, "In some corner of my mind, I noted the fact that Tobias seemed more and more at peace with his weird life, half bird, half human." So that's kind of a check-in on Tobias's mental state, you know?
Which is funny because they always want to give that perspective from somebody else's head before getting to his book. And I wonder if they do it more often. I haven't really. We'll have to see now with the cycle actually starting to see its variation now as far as the books. See if they do that a little more often now, since he's not going to have his own book coming up. It's going to be Axe instead of Tobias.
Because Axe and Tobias switch off.
Yeah.
That's right. We were discussing that, and I was listening back to an earlier episode as you know, we were getting ready to post it and everything, and we were talking about that. We were like, yeah, there's like a cycle, and you said it, but I didn't really catch on to it. But now I remember that like every eighth book or every sixth, seventh book is either Tobias or Axe.
Yeah, I think it's the third, and then the eighth, and then. So it's every 5 after the cycle begins, because they go through a series of 5 to.
I'd completely forgotten about that part. that they vary like that.
This book is the beginning of the next round. They did Jake to begin with, Rachel, Tobias, Cassie, Marco. Now they're doing Jake again. We'll have Rachel, as we know, for the stranger next round.
Yeah.
And
then how creepy does this building sound if you just imagine this in your head? Because every like street, every town has a street like this. Whenever let's see what chapter is. I think it's still chapter 7, so people can kind of follow on chapter 7, page 40 on the Kindle. I don't know what page it is in the actual book, but
is this after the passage you just read about?
Before.
It's before.
Yeah, it's a couple of pages before, like 2 or 3. See, this is why we need to both have the hard copies. I kind of wanted to order hard copy.
Target was
every
a single
book.
story whitewashed building.
Yeah. So but there's
41 for me.
Page 41 on the original pressings. So it says it was a residential neighborhood with older houses and
the bottom of 40 for me.
There you go. A few kind of low budget shops mixed in. You know, thrift shops and car parts places and small restaurants. That's like so much of Arlington. You know.
It reminds me, honestly, a lot of like the HEB area, like going up and down pipeline.
Exactly. Yeah, you can like picture that. And it says, our target was a single-story whitewashed building. There was only one door, and the windows were high up, narrow and long. They were blocked off so no one could see inside. There was a small parking lot with a dozen cars in it, and over the door was a sign, The Sharing, Building a Better Life.
Yuck.
Yeah, dude. Weird, man. Like, that would just be weird.
Corporate headquarters.
Yeah, it's their corporate headquarters, this little shabby white building with like blocked off windows and this like residential area, like
Sounds
tucked
like
away.
a scene from the X-Files.
Even if the sharing wasn't a, if we didn't know that it was a Yerk stronghold and an undercover operation to get alien slugs into your head, it would still be a creepy operation. Like, what the hell's going on there? The sharing, like, that's so culty, you know? I just don't. And then, of course, they're going to be in, like, this whitewashed, probably, like, old building, you know? It's like, seems like people would catch on to that and be like, hey, this is, what are these guys doing here, you know? But no one ever does.
I wonder how influenced by the X-Files they were in any amount of the writings for this series.
Do they have, like, a sharing-like type thing in X-Files?
There's a couple of
I want to
different,
believe.
I think, iterations. There's one where they're like out in a barn and it's like a legit like cult of people, and there's this whole like spiritual aspect that gets tied to it, and like there's always this big like wandering question about his sister and what her ultimate fate was, because he always
David
tells
Duchovny's sister?
right? Yeah, because she was supposed to have been abducted by aliens, possibly, but then she also might have already been let go of that and have passed on, and or she might be one of these wandering, aimless people somewhere along the lines. And she just kind of like gets bounced back and forth as a story plot.
That show goes on a long time.
It does. And they revived it a few years back.
They brought back X-Files?
Yeah, they did like an updated season on Fox. I think it only lasted the one season, though.
Yeah. You can't ever bring things back from the dead like that, you know? People always want it, but then it comes back. It's never the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because they had a couple of movies come out
Right.
after the series, and we digress. This is not Animorphs.
Yeah, this is not X-Files thing. So Jake has that tiger dream too that kind of changes throughout. This is a very heady book, if you don't mind the pun, where like Jake's having, this dream the whole time where he's basically a tiger and he's stalking Tom, and as he like follows Tom, he realizes he's a tiger and he's about to pounce onto Tom. And it's like he has that dream whenever he's recovering from the roach spray. Because remember at the sharing meeting, it was funny because Jake was like, oh, yeah, nobody's going to stomp on us because Yerks don't care about roaches. But then Visser 3 walks in his human morph, which is super odd.
I wonder if he did the same thing as I wonder.
Ooh,
did
Max
he do
wonders.
the same thing as Axe and take an amalgamation of various people? Or is that a particular person that he decided to morph? And if so, did he kill that person before he started morphing him?
I feel like Visser 3 would... He's so kind of like thinking about himself and big ego. I feel like he would take an amalgamation of other DNAs to create his own thing instead of like imitating a human. What do you think?
I think his morph is Trump.
They do say something about how the governor in the hospital is going to be like, he might be running for president in a year.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine that? A controller in the
So
White
we do
House?
know that they are absolutely in America, at least.
There you go. Yeah, and they say something else.
Or at least according to these context clues, they should be. But then again, we see also from the beginning of this book that they actually change a lot of details. So maybe they're actually in Britain, somewhere in the UK, and the White House is the Parliament, and yada, yada, yada.
Maybe those aren't even their names.
Yeah.
But yeah, they do switch things around a lot. But yeah, they also reference something else that indicates they're in America whenever. So basically what happens in this book is whenever they go into the hospital, they're trying to mess up the Yerkes plan to infest people in the hospitals. And so eventually, whenever Jake first of all, and I'm going to get to the point where they reference America again in their location. But first of all, what kind of plan do the Yerks have where there's basically a hot tub where the wires are like pulled out from the machine in this hospital room, and like Jake is sitting there putting the wires back together, green with green, red with red, blue with blue, in order to turn on like this hot tub.
Was it Jake or was it Axe?
Was it Axe who did it? Who connected the cables? I thought it was Jake, but I may have.
Somebody was doing it.
It should be a couple of Let's see, what chapter is that? Let's see. Tobias. Oh yeah, I have highlighted in here where Tobias is like, Marco, in this bright light, I could tell you if there was a single strand of spider web across that window. Do you ever notice that Tobias brags about his eyesight a lot?
Yeah. No, I feel like he probably had probably needed glasses.
Yeah.
As a human, and hadn't been. Probably like me, hadn't been diagnosed for many years just because he was able to see well enough. He didn't realize. I didn't realize until 10th grade that I actually needed glasses. And I, from about midway through 10th grade on, had glasses or contacts up until a few years ago when I finally was like, all right, I'm in the beginning of my 30s.
Time for LASIK?
Yeah, time for LASIK.
I got to get that done. Tobias got LASIK by being trapped in Red Tail Hawkmorph.
How convenient.
I think it's chapter 15 or 16 where they're in the hospital. And I have a Max Wonders, even though I'm Michael. I have a Max Wonders.
My goodness.
I was thinking in chapter 14, there's this one part where they first get into the hospital. They're in Fly Morph, and
had some wonderings based off of some of those too.
And they're trying to find this because they know that if the Yerks have a plan to infest a bunch of people in the hospital, they have to have a Chondrona pool, right? Like they have to have a Chondrona ray there. And so they morph into flies. They're in the hospital, and Jake's like, okay, we're looking for anything that might be a miniature Yerk pool. Everyone except Axe has been near a Yerk pool, so try to remember that smell and see if your antenna pick up anything similar. So my Max Wonders, coming from Michael, is do scents translate by morph? Like, for example, as a fly, if you think of a scent that you got as a human, will flies pick up? Well, does that translate, Like, is it the same thing?
I feel like we've seen a lot of instances where, like, every time they get into a new morph, like the seagull, every time they were able to identify something, somehow either they are automatically translating it with the human portion of their brain, and they're like, oh, that part recognizes what this scent is, or is able to translate it well enough that the seagull brain, which is actually capable of picking it up from this far away, is translating it for my human brain. And I wonder which direction it's working, actually.
Yeah. That's useful, though. But it just got me thinking, like, what is smell to a fly? Because a fly doesn't smell, but he's calling them out like, hey.
Oh, yeah, because they got completely different types of vision.
Yeah.
They're seeing all kinds of different colors that they otherwise wouldn't be able to see as humans. Like,
So that's why it makes sense to practice the morph, so you can kind of, what's the word? Like analyze the senses that are coming in, so they can actually be useful.
Get familiar with your inputs, so to speak. How do these controls work?
Let's see. Okay,
it's like when you just jump into a video game without looking at any of the how-to, not looking at any of the manual or like any of the control mapping or anything. Just like, figure it out as we go. Hit every button.
Yeah, that's what they do. They, like I said, they didn't know what they didn't know. I don't think they had enough time to stop down and practice any of this stuff. I also had
a lot of times no, but honestly, it's kind of self-imposed most of the time.
The time crunch.
Yeah, I mean, in some of these instances, like with the whole figuring out where they were sucking up their water and air from, the bus ship that they had, the tankard, that kind of made sense. There was a kind of time crunch because eventually they were going to have to move on, whether it be because they had sucked up too much water and it was going to be noticeable, or it was going to be completely dry, or whatever the case may be. Who knows where they would have cared to stop, but. Or like not knowing if they were going to keep the same entrance to the Yerk pool, which we see they did end up changing. Now, whether that was because of their event that they caused or because they were naturally going to cycle them, we'll never know.
But I was thinking too, like, why do they all go on a mission? Like, they all morph into roaches with Tobias watching. It's like, what's that strategy? Because it seems like you'd want to keep a couple people behind. just in case.
Especially on a reconnaissance mission like that, when you're just trying to like find some more info out.
They really risk it all. But then you'd probably have one person.
That conversation at one point about why don't we just like one or two of us go?
Yeah. But they all go every time. They're just all in it. Because then you would have like one guy, probably Marco, who wouldn't want to go on everyone, you know, like wouldn't want to go on every mission. He'd be the one kind of hanging back and not doing it. Okay, yeah. So here's that scene. So basically, Jake wants to fry these Yeerks that are in the pool, and he says there were no tools in the room. But I did find some tape and a pair of tweezers. MacGyver over here. He says, that was all I needed. Yeah. I began reconnecting wires, red to red, blue to blue, green to green, and then turned on the jets. And then he just like clumsily falls.
So yes, it was Jake.
Conveniently for the Yeerks, falls face first into the Yeerk pool. And it just so happens that Tom's former Yeerk is in there.
What a coinky dink.
What a coinky dink.
What a mind fuck.
Yeah, big time.
Jeez. Like, not only did I have your brother, I've had you as well now. But it's so crazy what that ends up doing at the end of the book. I really kind of like that.
Now, are you referring to the vision that Jake gets?
The imparting of portions of each of that Yeerk's previous controller's minds.
That Yeerk's into Jake, where he gets to keep it. And so the Yeerk's name is Tim Rash.
Mind meld, so to speak.
Oh yeah, here's
a Star Trek term.
Here's Animorphs trivia for you. Random trivia, Max. What is the Yeerk's name in Jake's head? There's no way.
I don't remember the number sequence.
If you know the name of Jake and Tom's Yeerk, then you're a true Animorphs genius. His name is Tim Rash 114. Formerly Tim Rash 252 of the Sulp-Nayar pool.
The Sulp-Nayar pool.
Sulp-Nayar. That's cool. It's funny they have numbers like I guess math is
like a numbering system, and it makes me wonder who's the lowest number, and is that actually representative of their population?
There you go. Yeah, because he says he was formerly
like we have I wonder if they also have some amount of a collective consciousness to know. I guess not, because if one Yeerk knew about Jake, all Yeerks would know about Jake somehow. So thankfully not.
We do find out a lot about how the Yeerks control. You know, the Yeerk is telling Jake, it's like, it shocks you that I can play your thoughts back for you. This is in chapter 20. It says, your brain is no different to me than one of your primitive human computers. I open any file I like. I play any software. I use you. I own you. I dominate you. You are nothing anymore. Just an echo, just a ghost haunting the machine of your own brain.
That's intense.
Terrifying, dude. Terrifying. Yeah. And going into this,
kudos to Jake for not breaking right then and there.
He's good. Jake kind of like worked him down. Kudos to the other Animorphs, especially Axe, I guess, for like realizing.
Axe is like off the bat was like, filthy fucking Yeerk.
Yeah, he's got the tail at Jake's neck, and the guys are like, other people are like, wait, what are you doing, dude? Going into this book,
the fuck, Axe.
Going into this book, I didn't remember the plot at all, and as we were going along, and then Jake fell into the Yeerk pool in the hospital, I'm like, oh my god, oh yeah, and I was like, oh shit, Jake is a controller in this book, because I always remembered in my head, for some reason, I thought they had taken Tom out to the woods and like had Tom tied up. That's the way it was. I conflated the two in my head, but I was like, oh yeah, it was actually Jake, you know?
Yeah.
And the amount of action that
Tom was there in a manner of speaking.
Yes, he was there inside of the Yeerk. But it was like it's amazing to me how this book is a little bit different as far as the action, because there's not really a big final mission. The last half of the book, Act 3 of the book, is Jake and his Yeerk being kept out in the woods, and that's where they reference America again. They say that we were somewhere in a national forest.
Yeah,
so that's like another thing,
yeah,
you know. But that's
pretty
the whole
specific, or at least North American. I think there's still national forests in like Canada.
Oh yeah, see, Canada is probably the second most likely option because there's still malls there. There's still coasts.
Yeah,
you know, cities.
It's definitely a first world country somewhere.
Yeah. It's not like Syria or anything like that. You can kind of tell.
Or Armenia, Jesus.
Yeah, but like, and so in this one, the whole third act is like the Yeerk using Jake's power to morph, and then like all 6 of the Animorphs are out there, like, you know, watching, or all the 5 others are out there watching, And so, like, they have good reconnaissance on that. And, of course, Axe is morphed to Jake back at home. And they talk about how he ate, like, 6 pieces of chicken, an entire pie that was meant for the family.
Just going nuts. I wonder what kind of stuff. So that's another wondering I have is what happens to all of that food if he just, like, stuffs himself to the point that, like, any human would be sick an hour later.
Yeah.
You know, like, probably contemplating throwing up because they're so, like, miserably full. But he's going to just demorph.
What happens to the food in the digestive
Yeah.
system?
Does it just get, like, fucked off in Z space somewhere?
Is he still full? Is Axe still full whenever he morphs back to Andalite?
Right? Yeah. Like, can he eat in one morph? I think I had a wondering kind of like this a while back of, you know, can they conserve food that way? Can they, like, be a mouse and eat, like, a third of a wheel of cheese or something and just be like, oh, I'm fucking good for a week. And then, like, morph back to human and be cool?
Be satiated?
Or does the morphing process necessarily use up any energy that they would have otherwise received from that meal?
I think
Do they have to be morphed long enough for it to digest and actually convert to energy?
right.
Where does the line cross?
That might be that might be part of it. I feel like since if you think about it, like if they're in morph and something ruptures on their insides, or you know, if you're in an ant morph and you get bitten, you can morph back and you can morph back to human and then morph back to the animal, and the animal isn't affected. So I feel like when you morph to human from an animal with food in your stomach, the insides completely change, and then that food is gone. Either way, unless it turns into energy, which would kind of make sense.
Which gives me another wondering that I had. I wonder,
Max wonders.
now that Axe has each of their DNAs individually, and he
Yes.
can selectively either choose one of them like we see with Jake, or he can combine them like we've seen with his normal morph.
Yeah.
I wonder also, side wonder, can he combine any combination thereof and make, like, I can't think of what the
Like
number would
morph
be.
into a
Like,
different
can
one
he
every
can he
time?
be like any combination of up to like 25,000 different versions of the human because he's got the 5 different people to choose from and can combine them in any combination of ways. But the real wondering is now that he's got their DNA and he can represent that for them.
Yeah.
If they were to get maimed in human form, morphing back and forth doesn't fix that after all. Mm-hmm. Can they reacquire themselves from Axe?
No, because you can't acquire animals unless it's the original animal. That comes up in the series. I don't know exactly where, but like you couldn't acquire Jake in human form couldn't acquire Marco's gorilla morph because it's not the original DNA. Yeah, they've dropped that. If they haven't dropped it already, they will at some point.
I was gonna say I don't think they've addressed
haven't
that
touched on that.
aspect yet.
Yeah, so you have to acquire from the original animal DNA.
Okay,
The one Max wonders that we could actually kind of answer. I don't think that's ever happened before.
it's an Annie first.
It's an Annie first on the world's only Animorphs podcast. We also find out about the other races that the Yeerks have taken over because we knew they took over the Taxons. We knew they conquered
Willingly.
the Hork-Bajir.
Unwillingly,
But then they dropped 2 others. Actually,
Ged?
3 other. Yeah, the
which
Ged is
what
one
I
of
think
them.
is their original
Yes.
hosts, right? Yeah.
And they described them as monkey-like humanoids with webbed fingers. Are the
Which
Ged.
I
guess they're
thought
from the
of,
Yeerk
like,
homo.
I always forget the name of it. Harvey McDuck or whatever his name was. That like humanoid, overgrown, muscular duck.
Yeah.
Like with the webbed feet, I'm sure still.
Creepy. And then they also dropped the name of the Stram and the Mac. So they've conquered the Hork-Bajir, the Taxons, the Stram, the Mac. And let's see. So page 135 on the Kindle in chapter 22.
It might just about match up on the book.
And this is where the Yeerk has morphed Jake's body to the wolf. And they're trying to run away, but the Animorphs are hot on their trail.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool scene. They got an owl finally in the in the mix.
I think it's cool how you never knew what the other Animorphs were doing.
Okay, it's 136 for me. This is where it's starting to get just a little off.
Yeah.
Because earlier I think we were pretty still
We're like
square
one-
on with
one,
40
one.
and 41.
Yeah.
But yeah, 136 for me is where he's talking about arrogant. Why wouldn't we be? We are the most powerful race in the galaxy, overlords of the Taxons, conquerors of the Hork-Bajir, and the Strahm and the Mac. Soon to be conquerors of the humans.
Yeah. And then we find out that, like...
I want to hear what an updated Yerk voice would sound like. What kind of effects would they put on that vocalization?
Dude, thinking about being a slave in your own brain to one of these things, where they can rifle through all of your memories, watch your dreams. They never really sleep.
Imagine if they'd have gotten to Tobias before Elfangor did. Somebody like him probably be like, screw it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
I'll kick back and watch the TV.
Man, oh man. Just for years.
Of my life.
Yeah, that's... I mean, some people do that, you know? And then there's an ode to humans here that Jake noticed the basic difference between on page 138, it's a couple pages later, the difference between Yerks and humans when he says that
the fact that they don't give up.
Yeah, a human will fight even when he knows he can't win. Maybe our species is just a little crazy, but human history is full of cases where a handful of guys would fight an entire army.
Remember the Alamo.
But they'd fight anyway. What'd you say?
I said, remember the Alamo.
Yeah,
deep
the
in the
Alamo.
heart of Texas.
That's right. Whereas Yerks, the Yerk is like, why fight if you know you're not going to be able to win? So the Yerks do kind of have that collective conscious where they're maybe not collective conscious, but that same kind of hive mind that the ants do. It's like we're part of the bigger...
similar aspects, but yeah, not the full on connectivity that you would imagine.
Right. The Geds, dude.
Because I think even within ant society, I'd have to research this further. But I think certain species of ant, there is like a certain amount of command that can be like given from the queen back at home and transmitted out to, whether it be through pheromones or through some kind of actual connectivity that they have.
Yeah.
There's communication to remote drone ants from the hive.
Just like signals moving through the air. That's crazy. Yeah. Then they actually reference a little bit of what is to come as far as coming stories, because like the Yerk tells Jake, he's like, oh, you don't know about the story of the Andalites and the Yerks? You should ask your friend Axe to tell you. You know, that's the whole Andalite.
Hence his hesitation to impart any more knowledge than is absolutely necessary about any aspect of the morphing. Even though they've already got the technology, they have the power and the ability, you would think that for at least the sake of the mission,
to know the history,
they've got that much. Give them at least enough to be able to more properly control the morph, be more adept at it, you know, like get onto your level. I
think Axe is more subservient. You know?
I wonder how many morphs Axe has.
Max Wonder.
I wonder.
That's a good question. Yeah. Does he have any crazy weaponized? Maybe. Apparently not. I feel like if he did, then he would have morphed into something like his danger morph, his battle morph would be something crazy if he had it. But it sounds like, I think, and we're kind of speculating here on future books, but I feel like they go through some kind of academy, some kind of training, and you have to be a certain age before you morph, you know?
Possibly. I think I remember there being some reason why he's... And I think Visitor 3 like automatically calls it out whenever he does slip up and talks to him. Mm-hmm. That one time, he's just like, "Oh, you're a young one.
Yeah,
you're a child."
Yeah, there's a child there. And then, so in addition to kind of a reference to the Andalite story, he also talks about the Hork-Bajir, the Yerk does. Jake's like the Hork-Bajir who had been forced to attack his own kind, to destroy his own friends, as an unwilling slave to the Yerks. And of course, we get to see that story later in the Hork-Bajir Chronicles.
Oh, man, I can't wait for those.
Yeah, dude, I'm sitting here looking at my copy of Andalite Chronicles, which came in, and Visser, which came in.
Oh, you ordered them, nice.
Yeah, got them from eBay. That's the way to go, man. eBay, they're like $4 a pop. I've probably spent like $50 on Animorphs books, but it's all good. And
that's because you spent like $20 on the graphic novel. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That takes a good chunk of it. And then at the end, there's this curious part which is referenced later. It sounds a lot like the Eye of Sauron, but whenever the Yerk is done,
you know what it reminds me of? What? We'll find out later in the series.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it does kind of sound like the Eye of Sauron. I'm just like, whoa.
it's the vision that the Yeerk has and that Jake sees.
Dropping his name, but I'm not gonna.
That Jake sees when the Yeerk is dying, and Jake says, "And then I saw it, a creature or a machine, some combination of both. It had no arms. It sat still as if unable to move on a throne that was 2 miles high. Its head was a single eye. The eye turned slowly, left, right. I trembled, praying it would not look my way. And then it saw me. The eye, the blood-red eye, looked straight into me. It saw me. It saw me. No, no, I cried in silent terror. I looked away. And when I opened my eyes again, all I saw was a weird glow. The glow faded little by little. I was trembling. It's all over, Jake, Cassie said. And now he's back to normal. That eye, dude. And then they see the Yeerk on the ground, the gray slug, not 6 inches long, lay there still. As we watched, it withered and shriveled and became nothing. Crazy, man. That eye. So there's stuff I kind of remember from reading these as a kid, and then there's stuff I don't remember, and I'm kind of trying to stay willfully ignorant of until I get there, but I don't really remember what the eye is, so I'm kind of in the journey here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I think I remember what the eye is, and they're going to actually reference it, I think, in the next book.
What is the next one called? Number 7?
The next one is The Stranger.
That's going to be Rachel morphing into the bear, right?
Yeah, on the cover anyway, which there's a little like preview, of course, at the end. It like they give you the one chapter basically, or like half a chapter or whatever. But then after that, there's a preview for like what will be on the inside of the next one's cover or something. It says, "You must decide," the Ellimist said.
Oh, shit.
Decide
That's
what?
already happening.
I demanded. The fate of your race, the fate of the human race.
Wow.
So we get the Ellimist name drop here.
Yeah, already,
Do you
dude.
remember his counterpart?
No. Oh, I kind of do. I'm going to save it, though. I don't want to go there in my head yet. I want to experience
That's as
it.
far as I'm going to go. I think it's the counterpart.
There you go. Dude, I can't believe we're getting into Ellimist next book, book 7. This is exciting. We're chugging along through these, man.
Yes.
After we read 10, we'll be a fifth of the way through the series, you know?
I don't remember if I covered this one in the last one, but the whole idea of Jake having like a larger body but with roach limbs and things like that makes me wonder if there's ever been a time where they go to morph something like that, something that's small and has an exoskeleton, and if they've just like gotten the morph out of order so bad that they morph these really long spindly spider legs or something, you know, before their body has shrunk to the size necessary to support that weight.
Yeah.
And they
then
just
it
like
collapses
snap their limbs in half or something.
A lot of things can go wrong.
We gotta go back again and restart.
Start that morph over. Yeah. Man, this is exciting stuff. This book is unusual because it's a lot of perspective from the Yeerk perspective, a lot of filling in on exactly what Yeerks do and kind of how they take over and what controllers are going through, and the fact that Yeerks do pass down and keep each of a little bit of their own controller body. So much so that Tom now has a part, or Jake now has a part of his brother Tom in
That
him.
brought me to another wonderment that I don't remember if I covered last week or not, but I wonder if the whole trance that you go into from the morphing process, is a necessary numbness that is part of the technology, because the way in which it's actually extracting your DNA for the morphing is either like physically removing from some just repetition, one of your RNAs or something like that from your body and getting it transmitted, and you just like, you have to be numb to not feel that pain.
Wow.
Or is it even possibly like a part of your soul is being removed, so to speak, and transmitted to this other creature that's now able to take on your form because of it?
I like to think that it's painful. It's like a searing, unbelievable pain, but part of the technology is to cover that up with the numbing, you know?
Yeah.
Because
that's why
morphing
you
is a
gotta trance out.
technology. They created it.
Exactly.
You know?
What was the trial and error process like on that? Like, I wonder if that was the case. And if so, how many times did they have to go through like, no, not numb enough?
There were some botched morphs there. And Jake does have some control over it, because at the end of the book, he morphs a little ways into wolf morph and is able to stay in wolf morph and
enough to
just garble his voice up
Yeah.
and call Tom and say, "Tom, don't give up, never give up."
So there's an example of them finally getting to a a portion where they start to control the morph and allow it to just enhance them. Like, still remain virtually human, but bring in aspects of kind of like what Marco was describing with the gorilla morph, how there really wasn't a whole lot of physical change aspect other than he just got bulkier and he kind of like lost a little bit of height, I think, on his legs. But otherwise, it was just like bigger, stronger version of his own self. Can he control that even more eventually and get to where he is like full stand-up human, but with all of the gorilla mass and strength, you know?
We shall see in the coming days. That's book 6, ladies and gentlemen. Any other last thoughts, Max, on book 6, The Capture? Isn't that what it is?
I loved all of the references to the Fly movies.
Yeah. Help me. I'd never seen the Fly. I don't think I've seen the Fly. Probably on TV.
Any version?
The Jeff Goldblum version, I'm sure I saw on TV, but it used to creep me out, dude.
Yeah, they did a lot more visually with that version than they did with the original.
Is they were from like the 50s or 60s or something like that?
Yeah, somewhere in that time frame, I believe. It was pretty old.
Help me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how they
it looks very like Shaggy DA type of.
And then there's that part in the book where they're like, coincidentally, The Fly was on TV last night, and we all watched it.
Right? Like, what's the ironic timing of that?
The day before they switched to Flies.
Here you go. Yeah, I can't remember if it was specifically this book the first time, but I think there's another time where they morph and somebody damn near swats them. And I think it was either this one or that one that made me always double guess. I started trying to like speak to various creatures that I was about to kill, all kinds of insects. Like, that's better not be one of you for whatever. I'm not. There's no reason for you to be morphed in my room. So,
listen, if you're an Animorph, just morph out now. I won't tell anybody, I promise. But I don't want to kill you if you're trying to save us. You know, like talking to a roach in your bedroom.
Fly away now. Otherwise, I'm going to squash you because I think you're just a regular bug. No, I'll try it in thought speak. Okay, no, okay.
If you're an Animorph,
gone.
talk to me in thought speak. Yeah, and then
Still haven't had a roach that's half alive try and demorph below my feet.
Terrifying.
So.
We'd be scared like the woman who was trying to boil lobsters, and then all of a sudden they start morphing out of out of lobster morph. Good stuff, man. I'm excited for 7. We get to see a little Elemist action coming at you.
Yeah,
guys, remember to go and subscribe to our YouTube page. Just search for the world's only Animorphs podcast, and then also on Instagram, only Annie Pod. Make sure to go on there as well. Check it out, guys.
Peace.
Peace. We'll see you next week. Until then, we fight.